I said I'd be back. And here we are. Obviously, this isn't exactly the same setup I had last year, but it's been an interesting year. Let's leave it at that for now. If you want to talk a little bit more about the repercussions of that and or just how a lot of us are feeling emotionally, I have a very different video tonally that you can watch over there. But it's Christmas season again. 2020. Wow. We did it, guys. We made it. We get to have Christmas themed masks and seasonal festive stay-at-home orders and, really bringing back the whole like, oh, it's winter, you might die kind of vibes, like that vintage, like, ooh, is the vaccine coming kind of thing, which we're all so excited about. So while that's happening, why not watch a few Christmas movies? And I do mean a few. 4 seems a little more reasonable than last year. If you like this video or are interested in some other holiday movies, I have a whole playlist that you can look back up on right about there. So if you remember from before, when we go over these rom-coms, we're going to go over certain qualities that make it a rom-com. If you remember before, one of the rom-com options I chose was the BuzzFeed series called Unfortunately Ashley, especially, or more specifically, season 2. Now, when I talked about that series, one of the things that I talked about was like how important it is to celebrate and to support and back and watch queer creators, because while we have some amazing pieces of cinema and literature that have come out in recent years, we don't really have the overall like rom-com, adventure, sci-fi, whatever you want to fill in the blank, like feel good, doesn't have to be too serious type content quite yet, generally speaking. So when I was talking about that series, which still is awesome, go watch it if you want to, I was saying like that maybe one day we'd have a Christmas queer movie to review that could qualify as a rom-com and just be like lighthearted fun. Amongst many surprises, both wonderful and terrible, we got Happiest season. Something I'll talk about as I go throughout the video will be how some of these topics may be of a more sensitive nature to some people than to others, because each journey as a LGBTQ plus person is very personal and unique, and not everyone has the same kind of support system, etc., which will become apparent in the content and the discussion that we will be having today. So I'm just entering into this saying it is understandable if we have a different experience with this movie or you feel a different way about it. It's very normal. It's okay. In Happiest season, we started out with Kristen Stewart's Abby and Mackenzie Davis's Harper, who have been dating for a little over a year and who live together. They're GFs, girlfriends. Walla wah. So we don't really have the traditional meet cute scene that you get in a lot of rom-coms. Like, you don't have that moment where they met or that like falling in love phase. It's more focused on their relationship and like that next stage versus that early like kindling of love kind of phase that you get in some other rom-coms. However, there are a couple of scenes where you will meet at least one other character that I know Twitter feels very strongly about. I'll get into that later. She's a side character, we'll get back to her. She's awesome. I will come back to it. So instead, because we don't have that traditional meet cute or those early stages, instead it's really the first like 10-ish minutes or so of the movie is about trying to have a meet cute with us, like with the audience, basically being like trying to convince us into falling in love with the couple. Do we believe it? Do we think it's adorable? All of those things. We get that as we see Harper and Abby going door to door with like a cute Christmas tour, checking out some Christmas lights in a beautiful, like wonderfully decorated neighborhood. R.I.P. the the idea of being able to go out and hang out in large groups and do something quirky and fun like that, but Christmas lights are still a thing. We can go do that. You can drive around and look at Christmas lights or walk or something. It's fine. But in this little moment, we find out Abby's trying to like Christmas for Harper's sake, but she's just not a big Christmas fan. And as we come to learn later, part of it is that she just doesn't have a family anymore. So as Christmas can be a very like with your loved ones kind of thing, it's just really not been her thing since she was a kid. So while Harper is trying to convince Abby why she should love Christmas, they sneak away together and go to a rooftop of a house that looks like it's abandoned basically, or at least not currently occupied, so that they can like see the whole like city and all the lights when they get caught and almost get in trouble and they escape together. Like in the heat of the moment, Harper invites Abby to come home with her for Christmas. But the next day, we see Harper waking up to hear Christmas music playing through the apartment, and her girlfriend's making her breakfast, and it's all sweet and romantic, but you can see on Harper's face that something is wrong. I mean, you probably know where this is going, but Abby doesn't know. Abby is psyched about going home with Harper. She's totally done like a 180. She's like, you know what? This is going to be great for us. In fact, she picks out a ring without telling Harper. So she's going to propose to her, and it's going to be awesome. She's going to even ask Harper's dad, like the old-fashioned way. It's going to be romantic and wonderful. And then that leads us to the problem. On the way to Harper's home, Abby has a confession to make. You know, when they're about 2/3 of the way to her house, while Abby's like, I'm really good with parents, this is gonna be great, you have nothing to be worried about, like, it's gonna be awesome. Harper's like, actually, remember that time when I said that I came out to my parents over the summer and I also told them that we were dating, and they were really happy about it? And Abby's like, yeah, were they not happy about it? And Harper's like, well, thing is, I didn't actually tell them any of that. Harper puts Abby in the position of having to make the decision, which isn't much of a decision given that they are almost to her house, of if she's willing to go and pretend to be just her orphan friend who had nowhere to go for Christmas. This is like the reverse of like a pretty popular fan fiction trope, which is the like, I lied to my parents and said I had a boyfriend or girlfriend, and now I have to go home for wedding, Christmas, whatever, and I don't have anyone to pretend to be my boyfriend or girlfriend, and if I don't, they're just gonna bother me. And then their best friend, coworker, whoever's like, you know what? I could pretend to be your boyfriend or girlfriend. And they're like, really? They're like, really? What's a few days of sharing a bed in your old childhood room? This is the opposite of that. Which I'm not sure is a good thing. It does lead up to some rom-com holiday shenanigans, though. Just, you know, maybe not as fun as the other ones. For a lot of LGBTQ plus people or queer people have had that coming out or in the closet or combination of the two type phase, and that for some people can be especially difficult or triggering or not very fun to relive, and maybe not their kind of movie, which makes a lot of sense. Another reason why this problem just continues to get worse is that Harper pretty clearly has a lying problem. This just comes with the territory of having lived in the closet for as long as she has. Not as an excuse, but just to say, like, as someone who is just so used to having to hide a part of herself, it's just like comes naturally. I don't think in other things so much as that we see this side of herself while she's at home. And that just keeps happening, partly because Harper keeps coincidentally running into old high school flames and friends, etc., which we begin to learn more about as the story continues. Part of this is also because her father is currently running for office for mayor. As one of the favorite of the three daughters, Harper's asked to help with a lot of the speech writing and like behind the scenes details for his election, while the other two daughters are kind of asked to help with like Christmas party planning and like helping their mother and things of that nature. And because Abby doesn't really, fit into any of those categories, she ends up being kind of pushed to help one sister or the other, and kind of ends up not spending very much time with her girlfriend at all. Even when they have a chance to go out one night, Harper ends up taking Abby to go hang out with some of her old high school friends, which on the one hand is pretty sweet and thoughtful, but when you think about that she's not going as her girlfriend, but as like this other friend slash roommate that she has from the city, who she kind of just doesn't pay a lot of attention to when they're hanging out with her old friends. And she's kind of flirting with, or at least paying special attention to, her old high school boyfriend. It doesn't look great. Around the same time, however, we meet Abby's high school ex-girlfriend as well. And that is the character Riley, played by Aubrey Plaza. We were introduced to her character, and the more the more she shows up, like, she's just so charismatic and like warm, and she connects with Abby immediately, and not in a like creepy or like I'm trying to steal you or whatever kind of way. It's more like on a I relate to you, I connect with you, I kind of think I know what's going on with you and Harper kind of way. Admittedly, Riley is made more attractive by the fact that Harper is just becoming more and more distant and cagey, and like the night after she stays out till like 2 a.m. hanging out with her high school friends, including her ex-boyfriend, Abby's like, hey, I'm just checking in on you because you were out really late, just seeing how you're doing. Harper begins to act really, really sus, as the kids would say. She starts being like, why are you smothering me? And like, I'm fine, why wouldn't I be fine? And being really weird and gaslighty about it. So that's not great. But when Abby gets to know Riley a bit later, because they keep running into each other, whether it's through errands or they're invited to the same parties and that sort of thing, Riley's able to give her a bit of background and to explain that they had been dating in high school and that they had been best friends forever, and then they became girlfriends. But then one day, when her other friends had found a love letter from Riley, because they would send each other letters in their lockers, Harper freaked out and said that Riley was just obsessed with her and outed her and lied about their relationship. And that totally screwed the rest of Riley's high school career, basically, at least socially, while Harper just totally moved on, or at least appeared to. So really, you can see that Harper's now torn between choosing this life that she's created for herself with Abby, or going back in the closet and finding this old perfect heterosexual, heteronormative life that she had chosen at the end of her high school years. Regardless, that's like at the heart of the conflict. The knowledge that Harper has had this problem before, but now years later, is she going to make the right decision and come out? So then we get to the pining, and that pretty much ties into the problem. We see Abby pining a fair bit for her girlfriend. You know, she came all this way to have this like romantic idea of like a first Christmas together and getting a family along with it. Instead, she's kind of pushed to the side and ignored or neglected for a fair bit of it. I mean, she does get roped into helping with some of the family activities and things of that nature, but it's hardly like the kind of welcome or the kind of opportunity she would have been granted potentially had they realized that they were girlfriends. Like, if the family had known that she was her girlfriend, they probably would have had a totally different response to her. We don't know. But Well, regardless, it's natural and makes a lot of sense for Abby to pine. Because you see that she just wants this life and this family with her. Now we get to the sides. There's not really a wise old character in this film. Best friend quirkiness level through the roof. We get Dan Levy as Abby's best friend, John, who is a wonderful gay book agent slash writer's helper person, publishing agent, something of that nature, who Abby is asked to help feed the pets while she's away with her girlfriend. And John is already kind of suspicious of Harper to a degree, and is someone who that Abby is able to check in with throughout the film and just to kind of explain how things are going. And she's very optimistic at first, but as it goes on, she keeps being like, no, things are still great. Like, I mean, I have to sleep in the basement in her sister's old room, and there's not a lock on the door, and her nieces and nephew keep coming into my room, and they did try to put something in my purse so that people thought I was a shoplifter. But it's fine, and I did see her flirting with her ex-boyfriend, but it's fine. And John's like, girl, what? And as I mentioned before, obviously there's the wonderful Riley, who's super understanding, and who takes Abby to a drag bar one night just so they could have some queer fun together and talk about their experiences. And if this was a heterosexual movie, you would be like, okay, I know where this is going. Because you usually, in these kinds of rom-coms, you have the awful city boyfriend, and then you go into the country or a small town and you meet the good, manly boyfriend who is non-committal and rugged but chooses you in the end, and you learn the true meaning of Christmas and all of that. So, like, I mean, I could see it. So the parents are of the type of coastal elites that, like, they need to have everything just so, and that includes, like, the holiday parties and, his campaign, naturally. But honestly, the parents mostly just seem distracted to me more than, like, intentionally abusive or neglectful. Like, it just seems like they're wrapped up in their own stuff. Like, they both have big goals they're trying to meet, so they're just caught up in that. Meanwhile, the other sisters, you have Sloane and Jane. It's very Jane Austen in some ways. Of course, I would think that, but still, you have the older sister, Sloane, who is super competitive, was a lawyer, got married, has beautiful, perfect twins, and now makes, like, curated gift baskets for Goop. And then you have the younger sister, Jane, or middle sister, who is, like, quirky and kind of doesn't seem to know boundaries and a little ridiculous and creative, and is constantly working on this wild sci-fi novel. And when you see Harper interact with her sisters, I think for the most part Jane is kind of ignored. While Sloane and Harper are just constantly competing for attention and to be the best. You can see as well where some bitterness has been building up in Sloane, and you can't really blame her for it, in that ever since she's become a parent, it's become apparent that people just treat her as a mom now and not, like, as a full, intelligent person with other wants or needs. And so every time she tries to volunteer to help with her dad with some of the campaign stuff, he keeps being like, no, you're perfect, you're doing everything wonderful, like, you can be with your kids or whatever. I don't think it's intentional, but she is miserable, and so she is madly jealous at how much Harper is involved with helping her father's campaign and just having something stimulating intellectually to be involved with. And to just be wanted and needed by her dad, it's like, hello. So then we get to the meet in the middle. Like, our protagonist gonna be able to meet in the middle to be able to solve the main problem, the thing that's keeping them apart. And how much do they have to sacrifice for this to happen? Like, the language my parents would use when you talk about marriage is like that you are constantly preferring the other person. Abby very selflessly prefers Harper pretty consistently. I mean, she knows this is only supposed to be a few days. She doesn't assume it's going to be this complicated, but she's willing to make those sacrifices if it means they can ultimately be happy together. That being said, the further this goes on, the more it becomes clear that there's some unfinished business that Harper has with her family, her old high school friends, and like her whole identity. There's a scene where Abby says that it's like there are two different Harpers and she's not sure which one of them is real. And Riley's like, what if they both are? So it all culminates in the big party that everybody's been leading up to, the white elephant gift party. Abby's still letting Harper do her own thing when John, her best friend, shows up. John agrees to pretend to be Abby's boyfriend, because why not? But John explains that the reason why he came all this way is because the more they talked on the phone together, the more John was just aware of like what a screwed up situation Harper had put Abby in. And he's like, you need me to rescue you. Like you can pack your things. I will take you home right now if you want me to. And Abby's making up her mind about it. And she looks over and sees that Harper's just flirting with like her ex-boyfriend. And so she goes up and is like, it's over. So Abby goes downstairs to the basement to pack up her things and Harper follows her. And they have this big argument. But Harper is like, no, I do want you. I do choose you. I'm not into him. It's crazy, but it's not that crazy. Like, I love you. And they kiss. And as they kiss, they break apart to see that Sloane is in the doorway watching. So immediately there's a problem. And Abby chases Sloane out upstairs. And it's like, you can't tell anyone, you can't tell anyone, you can't tell anyone. And then almost immediately they fall upon another secret that Sloane's husband is cheating on her. And Sloane freaks out now, assuming that Harper will use that against her. And it becomes an all-out catfight. Like, it's ridiculous. It's absurd, the amount of pushing and shoving and throwing and things. It's like, it's incredibly childish. And like the second, like, red flag fight that they've had in the movie. I know it's a comedy. And sometimes these things happen in comedies, but you're like, whoa, this is becoming a pattern. But it's also clear that like this is like a pent up, like, total fear of Harper's to be put on the spot like this. Because Sloane comes in and outs her in front of the whole party. And you can see like the paleness of her face and the horror on it. In front of everyone, including Abby, tells them that her sister is lying. And that she's not a lesbian. And that she's not actually dating Abby. So Abby runs outside. And John follows. And they end up going on a walk together. On this walk together, Abby is understandably distraught. And John lets her have that, like, emotional response that she needs to have. Then they have a heart-to-heart. And Abby, like, she cannot understand why Harper is lying and why she's continuing to hurt her like this when they just had a talk about this. John asks her, when your parents were alive and you told them, when you came out to them, like, how did they react? And Harper's like, well, they told me they would always love me and that they wanted me to be happy. And John's like, that's awesome. Like, that's wonderful. That's so great. When I came out to my parents, my dad kicked me out of the house and didn't talk to me for like 10 years. Coming out is an experience that's incredibly personal and isn't safe for everyone. Like, I'm not trying to be a Harper apologist or say that all of her decisions she made were right, because obviously that's not the case. However, I do understand to a degree the way that Harper feels. When Harper and Abby are having their argument earlier, Harper says, like, of course I love you, but these are my parents. Like, this is my family. And Abby is having a very hard time rectifying that. But also, while she no longer has a family, and that's awful, her family was luckily and wonderfully the type to immediately accept and, unconditionally love their daughter. And that's unfortunately not always the case. When I came out to my parents only a couple of years ago, I was very, very terrified of how they would react. I wasn't like, they're gonna kick me out of the house level terrified, much as I was afraid that they would look at me differently or feel differently in some way. While that was my experience, and my parents had a mixed but overall not largely negative response, that's not everybody's story. I know of at least one friend whose parents have totally disconnected her from them and who is no longer welcome at their house because of this. Like, it's a very mixed bag depending on your family and how close you are and religious background and old morals and old beliefs, and a lot of like reconfiguring your thinking and being willing to listen and read materials that you've never read and rethink and rewire your brain, basically. Unfortunately, now it can be as divisive as it ever was. They go back inside and Harper has a sudden change of heart. Now it's like she has a second chance. The family's still in the room when Harper comes out. Her family hadn't fully believed Sloane when she had said it, but now Harper's actually choosing to come out and say, yes, she was right, and I am dating Abby. She is my girlfriend. And it's this whole tense, quiet moment, and nobody really knows how to react to it. But then Abby says, like, it's too late. And she gathers her stuff, and John takes her and they go. It's a pretty devastating moment because you can see the look on Abby's face where she's thinking, like, she might have given up her nuclear, like, biological family in that moment for somebody too late to be able to have that relationship as her other family. But it doesn't end there. This is not one of those gay movies. After Abby left, Sloane, obviously feeling guilt at what she's just done, comes forward and confesses that she and her husband are getting a divorce and that they've actually just been pretending to be this perfect couple because they want her parents to be, to want them and to be proud of them. And then Jane comes forward and is like, I don't have any secrets. I'm just an ally. You know what? I claim Jane for the bisexuals, okay? Jane, welcome to the club. Then the mother ends up going down to speak to the dad in his office where he's like having a deep think about all of this. And the mother's like, our kids have been hiding things from us because they think that we wouldn't want them. Like, they're like, we screwed up majorly that our kids feel like we wouldn't love them if they told us something like this. And while it takes the dad a little bit longer to come to terms with it, by Christmas morning, he comes out and tells them that the only reason why he was running for office, or at least a major reason why he was running for office, was that he just wanted his family to be proud of him. Is it a satisfying ending? Well, Harper follows Abby and meets her at a gas station while they're fueling up and getting snacks before they go. And she comes out of the car and she's like, you don't understand, like, you are my person. I do want to be with you. I want to tell everyone now. And Abby's like, what about your family? And Harper's like, you are my family. And Abby decides to give Harper a second chance. Not everyone's happy with this reaction, but it is a very sweet romantic gesture. It definitely has that, like, Christmas magic element for the family to have a relatively quick turnaround about how they're feeling about their daughter coming out like this. Whether it's Christmas magic or something else, it's still really beautiful for the family to have this moment where they take stock of like their own responsibility in what's led them to be at this point, where like it's not just about the gay stuff so much as it's about like this whole like perfect upper middle class like heteronormative like family view, which has actually torn them apart versus bringing them together like a actually happy family would want to be. So like that's a really sweet lesson. It's not a wonder that found family is such a strong trope in like queer stories, because a lot of kids and adults alike no longer have those connections that they once had. So they're able to find community in these other people, and those people become their family. So I think it's really sweet and meaningful that, because not everybody actually gets that, but we get that happily ever after kind of moment. In the epilogue, we see that they do get engaged. We see that Jane hooks up with John, not like that, he's gay, but like as a book agent, he helps her get published and she becomes successful and all this stuff, and it just looks really lovely to see that like over the year that follows, her parents like go all in and end up really supporting them and go to a pride parade, and like they're just proud and happy of all of their kids. And that's, you know what, that's like all you could really ask for, right? Even if coming out stories aren't what we all want, like the fact that this exists and blew up on Hulu like it did means that we will get more queer movies, that we'll get more queer rom-coms. Maybe next year Netflix will be filled with like Wooly Woo Christmas movies, which would be awesome. Like, I want to see some cheesy like gingerbread baker like butch lady and her like girly curly girl from the city who was a writer and is now trying to get back to her roots and learn about the true meaning of Christmas. Like, give me all the stories. Like, it doesn't always have to be a portrait of a lady on fire for me to want to watch it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it can be fun. Like, let's have some fun queer movies. But I'm gonna rank this a 9.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. I mean, the ending especially really got me. It's really lovely to see acceptance as a theme in a movie like this. And like I was saying, I think it will lead to more, and that's awesome. One last thing I want to talk about before I end the video. As it turns out, Santa needs our help this year. The USPS had a really cool organization called Operation Santa, wherein you can read some letters written by kids, find the perfect gift or gifts that match up to what the child asked for in the letter for themselves or their siblings and family members. Wrap it so that it looks like a present following their guidelines. Then you take it with some postage to a participating post office. The link and information will be in the bio, and they will help make sure that the gifts that you bought for these kids will get to them this year. Santa sometimes has a little bit of extra trouble getting to some kids more than others, so this year we can really help him out by doing this. Before I finish, I actually wanted to read one of the letters. I will warn you that some of them might make you emotional, including this one. So just be prepared for that. This is from a child named Will. Dear Santa, do you support the LGBTQ community? And if you can speak to God, can you tell him I love him? And if he loves me for being gay? Thank you. Love, Will. As you might have noticed, Will didn't ask for anything physical this year. He asked Santa to ask God for him if he still loves him for being gay. As somebody who has been on Will's side of things for on and off for a very long time, and as somebody who went to a ministry school, and even though I am not ordained in any way, shape, or form, and I don't necessarily agree with the politics of a lot of people that I went to school with, I want to give a blanket statement and say that yes, Will, God does love you, and a lot of people out there love you too. And I'm sorry that you are in a position right now, maybe in a home or in a place where you don't think that God might love you if you are gay. And I'm sorry that this pandemic has made it so that a lot of kids and teens and young adults are stuck in homes where things are more complicated now than ever and more tense, and maybe you don't feel safe to come out or to live your truth, whatever that looks like for you. But I do want to say that there are people out there that will love you for who you are, including myself, and I believe God, and Santa for that matter. But welcome to the family, Will, and everyone else who is in that same position this year. It's been a difficult year, but we can still bring some joy and some love to some very deserving families out there. And even if this is the only video of mine you ever watch, that's totally fine. And I just want to say Happy Christmas and Merry Holidays. Okay. It's the happiest season, so doodly doo.